With Metaverse, it seems like a chapter of a classic, science fiction, book. We've arrived at the Metaverse. One of the results of technology is continuous evolution. Years of innovation has brought the onset of increasingly virtual worlds, access through games that leverage cryptocurrencies, NFTs, social networks, and augmented reality applications. These, along with other tech and digital innovations, have spurred the growth and expansion of a virtual world. The metaverse, while still in the relatively early stages of development, is an all-encompassing virtual world. Covers multiple use cases, and many still, kind of being tested across industries. Yes, it is promising, but like any other world, real or digital, it comes with a set of own challenges.
World. So I think it's something that we have been talking for a long time. Investments have happened, but why is the time right now? I mean, why do you say that this is the right time for Metaverse to really kick off? Key drivers, you see the technology revolution right at our doorsteps. Communication, connectivity, the shift in the consumer mindset, right? Almost 8 to 9 hours are spent by Gen Z looking at their screens all day. It's almost equivalent to the amount of time they sleep. Wider set of use cases. There is a lot of use cases that have been developed across industries and companies. I'll share some of that in the discussion also. There is a demographic tailwind. I mean, the world is younger to a large extent. There are more than 3 billion people who are actively playing games. That's a huge demographic tailwind to the sector, right? And there is this consumer-led, brand marketing, this content creators that are there across platforms, which is actually adding to it. In fact, some of an analysis shows that in the first half of last year, 2022, almost $120 billion of PVC investments and M&A commitments were announced on the topic. So that's a huge number, and I'm just talking about the first half. Additionally, when we surveyed technology companies, almost 57% of the CEOs, they came back saying that they have active metaverse initiatives underway.
There are a lot of different use cases that are being experimented in the market right now. The two that are of great interest to me, and Achyut, that to your question about, is it really hype? Is there really adoption? Is it going to stay? So the two that are of interest to me, and I'm personally using and actively driving adoption for those. So the first one being having an office in the metaverse. So especially for workforce that is remote. So in my case, my team is geographically distributed, and we have folks from across US, across Latin America. And for us, it's hard to travel every week and meet in a common location. So we have been in our office in the metaverse for the last several months, and we're actually seeing the game-changing implications of having, to your earlier point, Achyut, a persistent virtual shared space. Because now we all feel that this is our space, we belong, and that we can be there every day. And just like how we would have water cooler conversations in a physical office, we would have that. Just like how we would walk into a conference room in a physical office, we would do that. We would walk up to others' pods, or we would have our social hours. Like 2 months ago when it was my birthday, we celebrated it in the metaverse. So it's actually adoption of these technologies for the right use cases. That's one. The other one that I'm seeing, and this is a lot in my discussions with telecom company and other companies that have to provide customer support, is how can they elevate their customer support? And leveraging metaverse for that is something that can enhance the end customer experience.
What I felt was every single metaverse when I go in takes me time to learn and adapt. So it's a new learning every time. So what really happens is that if you take X platform and you give the X platform to a set of people, change is going to be very difficult. And hence the decision making of going towards what metaverse platform you want to choose and build your experience on top of it, whether centralized or decentralized. There is a lot of study in terms of what is it. So hence awareness remains to be the focus area. A lot of corporates, a lot of executives coming over and saying, hey, come over and show us more. Come over, show us more. I think they're going to 20 people, 30 people and just listening, seeing. And at some point, this will get consolidated. So around 23, I see there is going to be more maturity and some real business use cases that will come out.
The components of Metaverse. One is you definitely have virtual reality, which is the UI for your Metaverse. Then you have gaming, which is mostly the interaction point of your Metaverse. Then you have social collaboration where you bring a lot of people, etc. and all. Then you have blockchain as an infrastructure, which provides you the infrastructure for the Metaverse. 5G is basically the fiber, that is the reason why Metaverse is boomed across the globe. I would like, and Web3 is the economy part of it. Now, all this put together as a confluence is what defines Metaverse today. And there are many Metaverses in the world today.
Difficulties like created experience for a XR device or even for taking it to a normal mobile phone. So this kind of things are easing out, I would say, and this is what going to be like the increasing the adaptability of the Metaverse. It's not just like Metaverse is all about XR or AR VR experiences. It can be a browser experience, it can be a mobile experience. The main part is solving the problem, and once the problems of the people are solved, then it's on flight. And Metaverse is actually we can define it's a version of internet. So internet doesn't require any interface like orbit or anything. So the new evolution of internet is what Metaverse is. It's like the 3D version of the internet.
We also see a lot of traction. I've already seen a lot of my ex-bank guys already starting to work on the Metaverse for banking. So think about the whole virtual experience entering into the bank through that ecosystem and customer service there. So that's one area. On the financial services side as well, I see a lot of traction.
Technology advancements that we've seen in the last couple of decades, the inherent assumption was that they are not disrupting the ways of living, the ways of working, or the ways of doing business, right? So you bring one platform after another, enhancement of different technologies, including digital is all about digitalizing what you already had. But if you look at Metaverse and Web3, in my view, it's slightly different because Metaverse is creating an alternate, just like the Second Life, we spoke about, right? It's more like you creating a new world in itself for people where things are going to happen, especially after you're doing the digital, tokenization, assets and identity and all that. The Web3 is expected to decentralize a lot of things, including the currency aspects. So obviously that is going to disrupt the way we have looked at our life in it.
But we are actually working with a tech called as pixel streaming, where the entire experience is streaming on a cloud, and just the way Netflix streams a 4K movie onto any hardware of choice, so pixel streaming basically streams the entire pixels and the movements to your devices. So in that way, we are trying to reduce the dependency and the entry barrier.
Is when it is in Indian context, culture is an important aspect of Metaverse. Because the starting point of it is that the government of India is looking for digital museums which have been converted into Metaverse, and this is going to be adopted by various cultural organizations as well and create cultural experiences. So as Shubhra has mentioned, it's all about pride and belong. And so in an Indian context, the culture and cultural expressions and the metaverses which are created for expressing a shared culture, this is going to be a big thing. Maybe we have not started anything, we have not seen a big traction, but at least there is a digital museum kind of things are coming up, and there are a lot of interest from state and central government to do that.
There's a huge population in India who have cell phones, but they don't really know like the digital natives how to basically log into a Zoom meeting, right? So the interface of cell phone is 2D, right? Although the experience can be 3D. So one thing that we can see with Metaverse, right, when the form factor of all these devices becomes small enough, right, they can also learn to use WhatsApp or interact in collaborative spaces, without having to learn. And many of especially the senior citizens are hesitant to learn, right? And they're huge population, right? Because India has a huge population. Our percentage is very high, and they are not really into all these digital experiences because they don't want to look at a small screen and interact or even use a laptop, right? But if you can get it into their spectacles or something like that, which is much smaller form factor, which is a big hurdle now, right? Because all the Metaverse 3D experiences, the devices are huge. So there you can actually experience and learn, right, how to use your debit card, you can actually show them how it can be done, how to protect yourself from spam or phishing attacks. Just learning that, right, with Metaverse and actually using them, right? So forward a message using WhatsApp in 3D, right? So those are imagined interfaces that don't exist now, right? But it will make much easier for non-digital natives.
I do think that there's a kind of a mini digital divide in India between a niche urban segment that can afford hardware and so on, and the lack of affordability among others. But having said that, right, India still has the world's first metaverse wedding. We still have probably metaverse influencers that I don't think are existent in other part of the world, right? We have production houses creating media as well. So I do feel that, like how we had mobile first content now being created, we potentially on the entertainment industry, I do feel that there might be content created for the metaverse targeting a specific segment, for example. That could be one of the use cases that might come up in India more faster than somebody else because of some investments that we're already seeing in that particular space. I'm seeing some very niche kind of use cases that are coming up. I'm sure my friend over here will talk about it, but mental health therapy is one of them. Right? We have some of them in on the healthcare space, where we have simulation-based therapy, for example, that's coming in, it's not necessarily for a widespread population, but it does help individuals in certain areas, and it can provide some unique use cases as well. Those are areas where we can be pioneers too.
Look at the Indian market and the Indian consumer behavior over the past few years, right? What really matters are two factors. What can you create that can go out to the masses? And I'm talking about the masses to be a hit, to get that ROI. The second part is the cost factor. Right now, no matter what you create, you're still spinning out instances and you do have a cost per click. Now, if you're billed in dollars, right? You see most of our solutions, even if it's technology, it's so westernized. You need to really bring it down to India and then renegotiate and say, hey, this is what works in our market. You do it or you leave it, right? So quite a large, I'm looking at two key parameters when you say Indianization, irrespective of any sort of consumer divide, right, that exists. And I totally agree with Karthik that there is one segment of customers or consumers who come from the urban, more privileged, or even the tier 2 cities of India, who at least have a decent handheld that can run a basic metaverse. But then there's another 70% of the population that do not have decent handhelds. How do you bring it down to them? Still big question mark. But by and large, in order to bring it or cater to both segments or whatever the strategy may be, you charge a premium here or not there, I leave that as an open topic. But in order to bring it to both segments, you do need to look at it from two angles: the masses, how do you bring it out to the masses, and the cost. And as of right now, even the best of infrastructural players, whether it be the leading cloud players, they don't have the most optimal solution.
Now, coming to India, India is not going to be different in my view, because if you look at in the last few years, Indian government has taken a lot of steps, right from the way they created that UPI during the COVID times, which has helped us to kind of go expand, connect people, to now what you see in this ONDC that was launched very recently. I think the government is creating the necessary infrastructure for us to connect to the larger masses.
Right.
But anytime when you look at technology, in my view, there are three different entities minimum, play here, right? One is the government, which reaches out to the citizens and then bring them as a consumer for the corporates. The second is the corporates themselves create those the technologies with the use cases and reaching out to their end consumers and employees in a way. And the third is the startup community, right? That's where the creativity and the innovation comes in, and they create a new market which was never there for any of us to even think about it.
Metaverse or the Metaverse platform that's being built, the only ones who will last will be the ones who are deep diving into it. The surface level opportunity that people think, oh, this is like any other social media Web 2 era. I mean, there could have been, there are some very large companies who tried to build a social media like Bridge, for example, was being made by Naukri. Didn't work. The one that Google had, where they were running similar to Facebook, didn't work, because there has to be a very, very structured approach when thinking of building a new tech. Hence, I believe it's meant to be a very serious exercise when it comes to even thinking of building a metaverse, and using a metaverse is way beyond a thinking.
Adoption will take time. Even in the existing metaverses, where is the footfall? There are no concurrent users. Decentraland, Sandbox, all are struggling right now. So from an India perspective, I think India will see a lot of new innovations, which is very focused to India. When it all comes from the behavior of the culture that we have, and also the security part of things, right? The KYCs, these will be very stricter in India, and we are getting there already.
So in a recent report published by EY, I learned that India is going to be the largest economy by 2052, and there's literally an exponential growth curve that's going to take that forward. So what's interesting is a lot of that growth will happen because of that ecosystem, startup ecosystem that already exists in India. And to a lot of the earlier panelists' remarks, it's going to be based on creating the products catered to the Indian economy. So certainly we'll see a lot of growth of these type of Metaverse Web3 products. And then the additional thing I wanted to add to Rahul's point is the growth of the Gen Z, Gen Alpha, and them driving the adoption of these technologies. So the way I like to think about it is that just the way millennials drove the growth or adoption of digital technologies, because those people have been digital natives. I'm a millennial myself. The Gen Z and Gen Alpha, I like to think of them as the metaverse natives. They'll live and breathe in these worlds every day. Like
work last year when it comes to Web3, we focused on the startup ecosystem. What was interesting, what we found is that more than 450 Web3 startups in India. Almost $1.3, $1.4 billion of investment raised by Indian startups in Web3 in the last couple of years. We have 4 Web3 unicorns and almost 75,000 people with Web3 talent present in India, with blockchain talent present in India, makes us the 3rd largest talent pool in the world after US and China. So I think, all those are positives. But when we ask them what are challenges that you face, and to your point, Shobik and I think someone else also raised it, clarity in regulations and governing Web3 adoption, that came out as number 1. Almost 85-90% of the people said that's my number 1 challenge. You sort that out and everything is all is good.
In the IT industry, like last 25-30 years, right, the role of government is very critical in growing the industry, right? And we have seen that the government actually saw and created this exclusive economic zones, right? And we have seen that clusters growing around those places, right? And all the cities, all major cities, and that is itself is pulling in more and more people, and our economy is growing. Like cities like Bangalore would never be so big unless the government support and the IT industry, right? So metaverse is a parallel thing, right? We can see a decade ahead, or it could be a big thing, and if government works to positively to support that industry, there could be a huge growth in a separate angle, which is not just pure software itself, right? And because it's a lot of content and experience and transactions, like market.
I think spot on with what you said. I don't think we need to create awareness on technology. It's probably awareness on the use cases that probably, and I would expect that the experiences in the metaverse are supposed to be more intuitive, right? And I think people would learn. I don't believe that we actually had awareness on what we are doing today. It's expected to be more intuitive. People would pick it up, whether on the enterprise side or on the consumer side. What we probably need to be more mindful about, and therefore possibly educate, is on the behavior on the metaverse itself. Right? There are a lot more, ethics related, etiquette related, behavior related issues. It's almost like a different, a way of functioning, a way of working, and therefore there are aspects that we probably need to be a lot more cognizant and aware of, and that might require some enablement and education, not a technology enablement, but how do we use it? How do we behave in those spaces? What do we actually do? How do we, what kind of issues might crop up that we want to really educate people on is probably where my mind is today.
I just genuinely feel that metaverse has massive, huge potential. There's no doubt to it. But there are some very basics that need to be solved for. And nobody's looking at it. We are all looking at the big picture, the big strategy, what needs to be done. But even from a startup perspective, I do feel there's a huge potential on interfacing to end users, not just via CX or UX experience creation, but from a hardware, infrastructural, handheld creation. And whilst these glasses and all of that is coming in, I think we can do better than glasses and VR headsets.
It was wonderful listening into each use case and so much happening in this space. I'm really excited for the future to see how our children grow up in the metaverse and stuff. So we do have a group called as Technology Game Changers on LinkedIn, and we'd urge you to actively participate and share your expert views on that group, so that the rest of them kind of get to learn more. Thank you so much for being here.